Welcome to Flex That Worx, a podcast for anyone building, managing, or growing a flexible workspace without making things more complicated than they need to be. If you're running a single co-working space, juggling multiple locations, or overseeing a growing network of spaces across towns or cities, this is your space. It's for the operators, the managers, decision makers, the people doing the work to make these places run. This is Flex That Worx, scaling your workspace made simpler and less stressful. See you in the episode. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Flex That Worx. Today we are going to chat through your co-working space in terms of brand. So what helps you stand out if you are competing against bigger brands in your area, maybe smaller brands that are really well established, and what helps spaces to thrive and find their own audience. We've got Graham here, CEO of Baseworks. Graham's going to share what he has seen coming up for spaces that are pretty much probably operating just like yours. So we hope you'll find some really tangible takeaways today and a little bit of a viewpoint into what other operators are doing too. So Graham, when you look at the co-working market today, what do you notice about how spaces are currently presenting themselves?
There's so much segmentation already after coming into the idea of providing a desk, an office, or a meeting room for a day, just to keep it simple. There's so many nuanced layers to supplying these services, and you come back to the brand. Like we know some of the very well-known brands that are out there, the WeWorks of the world, the Industrious of the world. Everybody, if you mention WeWork, it's like, oh, is that the place you can have a beer? That's very much encompassed in their brand, that type of hipster vibe. I think everybody kind of thought that that's what co-working was. WeWork was co-working for a while because of the strength of the brand that it had. But I think as the co-working market matures, you are starting to see that segmentation that I've mentioned before. In our co-working space here, with a beer tap, it would probably sit idle Monday to Friday, right? Because we all drive here and drive home and stuff like that. So that's not something that you're going to expect if you come into our co-working space here. So the brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. The key thing for me in positioning is understanding the people that you want to attract to the space. And we have a mixed bag of people from various industries come in here. We have Crew in Galway, a space that is just dedicated for not even tech, but creative tech. You have animators, video game creators, character designers, and you've all the various industries attached to video gaming and everything else. And there is a TV production and media production and all these kind of things are all under one roof, which creates an unbelievable ecosystem. Firstly, if you're in and you're rubbing shoulders and having lunch with people that are in adjacent industries to what you do, but complementary industries as well, that creates such a petri dish that can create, so many opportunities, present you with different ways of looking at your own industry. You see that here, even when we're having lunch with people from different industries, you'll hear the chat about, and it's interesting to hear what other people are doing. So that's, I suppose, what I've kind of done there is kind of looking at branding as one side, then you sector is the other side, and then what you're going to look at is service levels. Are you going to go concierge white glove, or are you going to take $10, point at the desk, there you go, and leave them at that,
And so how do you think a hub can kind of tap into that niche audience piece? So if they want to have something around like shared values or some way of just defining who their audience is, what have you seen work well for hubs who are looking to do that?
If you're focusing on a niche audience, one of the key things would be events. Running events that attract people that have an interest. The great thing about events is they're generally after work and at a time that aren't convenient for people. You know what I mean? You have to get up and leave your house and make a plan and, organize things in order to go to a place. So if anybody turns up to your event when there's a certain topic or subject matter to be discussed, they're interested. And that then shows you have somewhat of a captive audience. You have potentially a service offering that they may be interested in. Tech-focused co-working spaces are something we do quite well here in Ireland. I mean, I can take a half a dozen straight off the top of my head here. And you'll see them, they would have focused on, at one stage, they were focused on blockchain, which was a big thing. Machine learning. I know it's AI, right? It's all AI, So what you'll see is the programs the startup programs that they're running, the talks that they're running, the speakers they're getting down. It's all around the same similar subject matter. And what they've done quite successfully is they attract like-minded people in a room and they're like, I like the vibe in this place. I might take a desk or I'll frequent the place a little bit more. Great to meet you. Let's have a meeting back here at another time. Tech is probably the easiest example of where I've seen it done well, especially in the startup ecosystems. And again, the one thing about startup ecosystems is they're generally well supported by chambers of commerce, enterprise funding bodies, VCs like to hang around, funders, angels, they all come to these events as well. So, and then what happens is you create a brand. So if you're a tech company and your address is, Republic of Work in Cork, right? A well-known tech centre in Cork. That's good when it's at the end of your footer. That's an example of it being done well. And I look, you've seen yourself, Amber, you were talking to guys in London. Maker spaces are getting very popular now as well. We're looking at things like Fab Labs, 3D printers. It's not all about the digital, or actually, hands-on stuff as well. Fashion, design, these kind of things. We were in Media City in Manchester, all focused on digital content creation. A kind of long-winded way about explaining the segmentation, I suppose.
Yeah, and getting into the differentiation side of it. So like there's the brand, there's the differentiation with the niche and the audience, and then there's amenities and what you're actually offering in the space, and how that will draw in a different type of audience as well. Because like speaking on the differentiation and also the amenity side, we're seeing such an upsurge in spaces that have creches and childcare attached. Absolutely huge, and such an interesting, and it's a need that's been in the market for such a long time, but isn't it interesting that people are moving now to create a solution to that need? So like, I think it's something that will continue to evolve in terms of how the spaces are used. Like I was listening to another podcast there this morning. They're talking about how companies have flexible, the work from anywhere, WFA. It was all WFH, work from home. Now it's work from anywhere. You'll have co-working hubs that are built by operators who know their customers are companies and their staff and their employees are coming in. And then their meeting rooms are being used for teams to get together, for group meetings, for offsites, for retreats. And then you have your spaces that are like incubators, like you've just described there, where people are coming together in kind of think tank scenarios almost, and it's a startup environment. They're entirely different. So like if you were starting out as an operator now and you were looking to capture your audience, how would you encourage somebody not to get caught in the shiny object syndrome and be trying to grab audiences everywhere and get customers everywhere? Because obviously people just want their space filled. You have to be very kind of clear and defined, don't you?
It's the same in any business you get into. I mean, there's probably countless people can relate to a time where they started a business and they set out to do one thing, wanted them to do something slightly different to what the plan was. I've often said if you try to be everything to everybody, you're going to eventually fall on your face. So I'm a big fan of making a plan and giving it a rattle and setting out with a focus, but keeping your head on a swivel and seeing what other opportunities are out there. You can't try to grab every opportunity, and I think you need to have the confidence. The establishment period is going to be very important. I mean, if you set out to appeal to techies, right, but all of a sudden you have work from anywhere people coming in the door who just want a desk, and all of a sudden your space is full with these people that are literally 9-to-5ers working for corporates, you kind of have to park the initial plan and go what's paying the bills and shift your service efforts to please and retain these people. You'll often hear me say it's flex industry, right? So in the establishment period, I think set out with a plan, try identify who's in your localized market, and then maybe have a look at markets further away and see what those markets are composed of and see what's missing from your market then. So you might have all the big chains in a city, or let's say a mid-sized town or city, right? And they might have all the chains in there, but they might be missing a simple hot desk offering that gives you coffee and a desk for $10. That could be an opportunity in itself. And if that's missing from the makeup of your market, then why not consider that? Identification, research, again, finding a space that's going to pay for itself with the model that you choose to go and fire ahead with. What I would say is, make the initial plan, go out there, but stay agile. Like as I keep saying, as a small business, one of the advantages you have is agility.
Question. So if an operator is listening to us here now and they're kind of starting out, right? They maybe they're a couple of months on the go, maybe a couple of years, maybe they haven't opened the doors yet. How important is it to really define who you're speaking to early if you're in a crowded space, you're competing against other brands. How do you know in terms of like at what stage should they really be looking to have clarity around who they're serving?
So before you start speaking outwardly and before you start banging the drum about all that you can provide and offer, you need to have a ton of other conversations. You need to be talking to potential customers. You need to be getting why you wouldn't use this. Again, it comes back to the research piece, Anne-Marie. If you're having conversations with live clients trying to figure that out, you need to do the homework first. You need to do the groundwork first before you go make the plans. Those conversations should be what shape your outward marketing, your website copy, your social media stuff. When you get to talking to actual prospects and leads and stuff like that, you should be in refinement. You should be in a refinement stage rather than a creation space, you know.
And do you think with the shift that we're seeing towards like the role of the landlords coming into the market so much more and kind of operators coming in, that relationship, do you think that step of that research is happening? How many kind of spaces do you think most spaces are doing that and are going in with like a clear kind of value proposition and a clear sense of the audience they're going to serve?
It's hard to say right now, but you'll be able to tell in a few years when the ones that haven't done this bit of research at the start and haven't scoped out their market fall on their face, unfortunately. Not that they'll fall on their face, but they could spend a lot of time hot stepping at trying to figure out where they belong in the market, you know.
I'm thinking about it from the perspective of, I suppose co-working spaces traditionally weren't a road you went down if you were looking to be a millionaire. You know, they typically probably were derived from a need for community driven by the necessity for a space to work. And as you say, kind of hubs for excellence or interest in particular, you know, zones of genius kind of emerged. But I think what's happening now is space is being repurposed, you know, and it is being seen as a financial opportunity. So I wonder where brand goes in that conversation.
It depends who you're selling to. So I had an interesting chat with a chap in Georgia, works from for want of a better expression, a polished co-working space. He went in there, he was promised community and a vibrant, you know, ecosystem and all that kind of stuff. And he said where he works is beautiful, but nobody talks to each other. All the things he was promised aren't there. So we had a very open conversation. You could see from the questions he was asking me, he wanted that community piece. He just wanted that kind of interactive environment. The idea that this is what co-working is has shifted. And I think it all comes down to who you're selling to. So in that instance, he was sold something that he didn't get. Okay. But the other thing is, if you're taking people that are on FWA or RTO or whatever acronym we're going to use, they're not your customer in a lot of senses. If their boss is paying the bill, they're the users, the boss is the bill payer, they're the customer. So you need to have a proposition that, and again, so what happens is your end user is your advocate. So you need to arm your user with enough reassurance for their boss that they can upsell it to them or sell it up the line. In that instance, you need to be marketing the space as professional environment, 101% Wi-Fi success, good coffee, social events, quiet, focused areas, suitable to bring clients in, ergonomic friendly furniture, all that kind of stuff so that they can sell it up the line. There's who's your user and who's your customer. Sometimes they're one and the same.
Do you have an example of a space where you think they've absolutely nailed differentiation in like a very simple but like a powerful way, that they're just clear on who it is they serve them really well in terms of amenities and things? I have one in mind, but I'd be curious to know him with what you've come across.
The guys in Grafter are very clear on who they supply and who they serve. C-suite business owners, and they apply a service charge and a service level that goes quite well with that. And then on the other side of it, we were chatting to that chap in Slovenia, as I've mentioned in the past, and he literally just opens the doors in the morning and he only has self-employed people working because his belief is that self-employed people they have drive, initiative, they clean up after themselves. That's his belief. So he expects them all to behave more like a clubhouse and their co-workers sharing a space rather than someone who's purchasing a service.
He's a great example because he has provided the environment for those people. He has been clear about the audience, and it's reflected into every process in that space as well. From what he shared with us, and what that does is it drives behavior of the members. It's almost like a school. It almost becomes a little bit of an institution because you end up having a format for the way the place works. So he shared with us that their intake is very specific. He has a process around intake because cultural fit is so important to who remains in the place. Their revenue model and their churn is based off the fact that that community piece is so tight and people know exactly what they get from their days spent in that co-working space, that, you know, people know they can go in there and be productive. He actually finds people don't like to speak too much to each other. They like to know they can go and have their lunch with somebody and have a coffee at 11 with somebody, but they don't actually want chit chat on the floor. And then they bring people in. It's almost like a hiring process. It sounds like people are almost assessed coming in, and they have a period of time in the year when new people come in. It's a 12-month membership. A period of time, like an interview process almost, where there's an intake. And that's only if people have given notice that they'll be giving up their space. It sounds like there's so much demand. There's a wait list for the space. So I'd asked the question to him, would you not open another space? And he said, well, the way this place works, it's actually run by the people working in it. It's not run by us, the managers. We provide the space. We facilitate these people coming into work and doing their work, but it's up to them after that. To your point, Graham, they're self-employed, so they know how to run their own ship. How interesting as an operator. He doesn't sound like he's in it for massive profits, but there is opportunity for that too. However, he's not losing any money on it. The space is absolutely taking care of itself, and it feels like very robust. He's actually one of the original co-working spaces in Slovenia. So really interesting as a model to see all the different elements and where brand comes in, where behavior of members comes in. And one of the points, you know, I heard discussed recently as well was this idea of that work from anywhere model, whereby if companies are calling people back into office spaces because they can't trust the work they're doing at home, that is not a productivity or a motivation issue. That is a hiring issue. Like, you've brought people onto your team who can't be trusted, essentially. If they're not going to work at home, they're not going to work in the office, probably. Your problem kind of starts sooner down the track. Yeah, of course, people will do a little bit more in the office, but ultimately, if the motivation's not there, it's probably going to be a short road, right?
It's easier to hide out at home.
Of course, but if people you're looking for A players who are just going to come in and get a bit of work done. In the same way, in a co-working space, you're looking for an A player who's going to put the knife away after they butter their toast, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but to your point there, and just to kind of go off topic slightly, like, I heard recently that there's a company out there, and they know what they want to do is you log in the morning, you open up your laptop. Imagine me and you now open up the laptop. I fire on my Zoom and you fire on your Zoom. We leave it just play away in the background. We're not talking to her. We could actually be in a different department.
So you're visible.
It's accountability was their justification for it. You're less likely to leave the desk if I'm subconsciously watching or pay, you know.
Yeah, of course. You know, and that's like the Pomodoro technique, you know, teams come together and do the Pomodoro. You'll log on to a Zoom call for 25 minutes of focus work. It works really well. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Have you heard about teams doing that working remotely?
Drive on, I'm always open to some education.
Yeah, so like people, if you're familiar with the Pomodoro technique, it's like a period of focused work. You have like 5 minutes of kind of get into the zone time. Then you have one clear task. Everything else needs to be closed. You don't jump topics or tasks. Notifications are off. And then you have a check-in period. So if you do it with other people, a timer will go off. You'll say, okay, if you want to stretch your legs, look out the window. And then you come back and you do your next 15, 20 minutes. And the idea being that you don't multitask. You come in and you set it up when you want to do focused work. So there have been remote teams doing that in blocks, on Zoom calls. Basically, you can implement that by yourself, of course, but people do it in teams as well. Naturally, of course, that's part of productivity, nearly totally another subject. But at the same time, comes back to how people work. And if your space is going to work well, you do actually have to be bringing people in who work in a similar way and have similar ideas about productivity. And that all fits into brand. Those spaces we toured there in Manchester, 10 a.m. we were in a space where there was chit chat, there was hustle bustle, there's people sitting elbow to elbow on these big shared tables, like really close to each other. You know, the coffee machine's going in the corner, some people have headphones on. Next thing, 10:15, I'm in another space across the road. Couldn't be more different. It's like you could probably have heart surgery on the table. The place was so clean. It was just like sterile, real, totally different vibe. Nobody talking. It felt like a hotel lobby, I would say. You would not think any of these people have seen each other before, and they definitely haven't hung out Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and had beers on a Friday night. Like, two really successful spaces, both parts of brands, which I find really interesting, because to replicate that across multiple locations is really interesting. Thanks for tuning in to Flex That Worx. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss our next episode. Connect with us on LinkedIn, watch the full episode on YouTube, and you can explore free tools and resources over at baseworks.co. This is Flex That Worx, powered by Baseworks, here to help you scale your workspace, making it simpler and less stressful.